Hello, I'm your host, Jessica Mernan, and this is the Inside and Outside podcast where we explore our connections to nature and also our inside obsessions, because as much as I love gardening, I also love TV. I'm an author and horticultural therapy practitioner. With my company, Basker, I help people and businesses use nature and gardening for health, creativity, and social well-being. This week's episode is maybe one of my favorite of all time, and I've done over maybe 200 episodes in my life, and man, Akaya Winwood is our guest this week. There are things that she said that I'm still thinking about that I've already applied to my life and I've shared with friends and family already. Akaya has done, to summarize all that she's done, it would be a 20-minute intro, so I'll just summarize. She's an author. She's a lead advisor at Third Act, faculty at Just Economy Institute. She's the founder of the New Universal Wisdom and Leadership Institute. She was the president of Rockwood Leadership Institute for 10 years, directs the Thriving Roots Fund, which supports young women's finance and philanthropic learnings. She's won countless awards for her leadership and visionary ideas, and I just feel so lucky that I got to interview her and have this conversation. It is, like I said, it stuck with me, and I hope that a lot of these things stick with you too and give you a little bit of hope with everything that's going on right now. And I also think it's a great episode as we're heading into a holiday season where we might not always agree with people in our lives, and maybe a way to find some common ground. Okay, I'm going to head downstairs. Allie, our pop culture reporter to the podcast, has arrived for our annual Thanksgiving together. It's a week of puzzles, movie watching, walks, eating more variations of potatoes than you might even know exist. And after this interview with Akaya and the things that she shared, I'm even more grateful to have this time with a friend. All right. I'm so grateful for you too. Thank you for listening. Everyone that's been around for over 10 years listening to this podcast, or if you're new here, thank you too. And before we get to the interview with Akaya, a quick word from our sponsor, My July, who makes one of my most favorite products of all time. I'll let you hear about it in the ad. I'll talk to you on the other side. This week's sponsor is My July. My July is a results-driven clean skincare line delivering products that are safe, gentle, effective, and comforting to those with highly sensitive skin. And its origin story is pretty beautiful. A mom, Dawn, was looking for solutions to help her daughter, Michaela, dealing with late-stage chronic Lyme disease. They worked together to create skincare solutions that not only calm Michaela's skin flare-ups, but were made for anyone looking for results-driven formulas that are safe, gentle, and effective for those of all ages for daily use. Some of my favorite My July products are their signature Gold Mine Face Oil. It's infused with a plant-based retinol that's more easily absorbed and helps refine skin tone. And my favorite is their Woods Nature Spray, an all-natural tick and mosquito repellent, which you might hear the words tick and mosquito repellent and you might think it's citronella candle, but Woods has become my go-to scent. It's woodsy, it's rich, it's sexy. I need it in my life every single day, even when I'm not going outside. And it doesn't just smell good. It's been clinically tested to offer 85% protection against mosquitoes and 100% protection against ticks when applied every 3 to 4 hours. And guess what? They just launched Woods Dog, a dog-friendly, vet-approved version of Woods to discourage fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes. And it might even help your dog be less stinky. My July truly cares about your sensitive skin and offers a range of products to nurture and create more calm for your body, face, and mind. Check them out for yourself at myjulyskin.com and use code INSIDEOUTSIDE15 for 15% off your first purchase. The whole product line has so much intention around it, and it happens to just look really good too. Again, that's myjulyskin.com and use code INSIDEOUTSIDE15 for 15% off. And I'll also include this in the show notes. Akaya, welcome to the podcast. I'll have to tell you, I have squealed twice doing this podcast when someone has said yes to doing it, and you are the second squeal that I've gotten.
You know, That actually makes me feel great, because when I think about one of my highest aspirations is making people squeal. Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I came across Third Act because I saw Bill McKibben speak in Charleston, and he mentioned Third Act and said that he volunteered there. And then when I went to the site, I'm like, oh, he's actually the founder. So I thought that was, and then I saw you on there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to interview her. So at the beginning of this podcast, we always start outside. And most times I'm talking to my guests and kind of walking them through how they connect to nature, or do they connect to nature? It's very clear that you are connected to nature. So maybe for your first question, we'll ask, when did you realize how much nature has an impact on you?
That's a great question. You know what? It feels like I've always known that. As I consider it, one of my best early memories was at Campfire Girl Camp. And I must have been, goodness, 8, maybe 9. And we would every evening, just after dinner, we would walk to the campfire from dinner and sing a song that connected us to the planet. And that memory, which I haven't thought about in, gosh, 60 years, right? That walk of an evening, every evening, that reminded us, and it was, we come to the council fire with measured tread and slow, to light the fire of our desire, to light the fire of woe he low, which in Campfire Girl terms was work, health, and love. So imagine, 20 some little 8, 9, 10-year-old girls walking toward the campfire every night, singing this song together. And so that, I appreciate your question, because I haven't thought of that in years. But I think that's where it began.
It's pretty astounding that you remember that song too.
I know. And I didn't even hesitate. I could have sung it, but I chose not to. But yeah, the words are absolutely there.
Wow.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful memory. Well, before we've got some more outside talking to do before we move inside. But I also, when I received your bio and just reading more about you, and it's award, these big things be these big things. And I always find it fascinating. I think those things are hugely celebrated and amazing. But I'm so curious about the decisions, the opportunities, maybe the missteps that were made in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s that actually led you to those big, big moments. And so I'm curious, where were you working when you were 20 and 30?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm going to try not to go all through all of the missteps, because there
just
were
some highlights.
plenty. I'm teasing. One of my first real jobs, once I got out of, I had a very dicey relationship with college. I did get my degree. I did go off to graduate school, but it took a while for all of that to happen. And one of my first real jobs was as a meat wrapper at a big grocery store. And it was there that I learned about what everyday work feels like. Because these are people, the butchers and the meat wrappers and the clerks, these are everyday people, right? And I learned how to be at work and to cooperate and to make good decisions based on, the quote power that I had then. I learned about how to be in a union and how to cooperate in many ways. And the good news is I had good leadership, even though that work was not where my life was going to take me. It taught me how to be in relationship with benevolent power, because that's really my bosses really cared about me. I was the first Black woman that had ever been hired there, and they cared that it worked, right? So this would have been back in the 70s, and I still remember how wonderful it felt to be truly cared for in a work situation. And that actually, as I'm thinking about it now, influenced a lot of how I lead. You know, if we're not caring deeply for one another and looking out for everybody's best benefit, even if they're, quote, misplaced, that they're not doing the, work that eventually they will do, it's important. It's crucial that we uh, stay in touch with everybody's humanity first, and then think about, well, what's the job?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I have not had the same type of career as you, but I think what's interesting is sometimes if I'm talking to someone and telling them about my experiences or jobs that I've had or opportunities, they're like, well, how'd you get that? How'd you get that? And I'm like, well, I met this guy at a party who
Right.
had a sister who,
That's right.
and I think, I'm so fascinated by how people got to where they are, but sometimes it's that job wrapping meat that you wouldn't have expected that led you to where you are.
That's exactly right. Right. Because it is about relationship. You know, if my mother or father could have mapped out a life for me, it would not look anything like the one I've lived.
Mm-hmm.
I learned early to not have a plan. And people will say, well, wait a minute, you're supposed to have a life plan and, all the things. And I went, I can't think like that. So mine has been a journey that the universe has been in charge of. And I just said, okay, you bring it and I will step on that path. And I did. It got me here.
And what about those moments, though, that I feel like you might be able to give some wise wisdom on these, of those in between moments, too, of where we know we're on the right path, but it's
Mm-hmm.
going to maybe take 5 years to get there. And we don't have money for a new pair of shoes, even though we were getting accolades and awards. Like in those moments, and I'm guessing you had some of those struggling moments. How did you carry on and motivate yourself to keep going?
I don't do anything alone. And I have a great need for solitude. I've always had the great good fortune to be in relationship to community, right? So I think one of the worst, most toxic patterns under our current capitalistic systems is the isolation it causes for so many people, right? You're supposed to do things up by your bootstraps. Don't depend on anybody. Don't ask for help. I learned early to ask for help when I needed it, and equally important, offer it. Right? To say, how can I help? What do you need? How can we do this? So, in my 20s, I lived well, collectively, there were 3 or 4 of us all living in the same house. And so we had dinner together and we went out and danced together and all the things. But it wasn't unusual then. It wasn't they're not being able to, they're not launching or whatever the language we
Mm-hmm.
use now. No, it's what you did, right? Because we were all making minimum wage. And so you lived together. And I think that set a tone for the rest of my life, in that I am, my wealth, if I have any, is in my relationships. It's in the love that surrounds me, because I'm absolutely open to it and I absolutely offer it. And it's not a romantic love. It's a deep love that I think actually, as I come full circle, there was that 8-year-old self, walking to the campfire in unison with other young girls, singing about our love for the earth and each other. that may have actually set the tone for how my life
Mm.
went.
Mhm. Wow, I love that you said that because very clearly, if you read anything, we're definitely in a loneliness epidemic right now where
Yeah.
which is wild because what brand is not talking about community? Join our community for like a skincare
Hmm.
company. It's like, what community are you talking about? So it's
Hmm.
like all of this talk about community, right? But then we have this huge loneliness epidemic. And I think that I was just reading the other day that a lot of times people deem self-care, let's say, as being alone, taking time for themselves. When, yes, that's important, but maybe in those times when you feel like you need to be isolated the most are times when you need actual real community.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So, um, that whole notion of self-care and the language is terrible.
Yeah, and when I said that out, you should have seen me. I used quotes and a grimace because I
Okay.
actually don't. I- I've written extensively how much I
Okay.
hate that word. So,
Right.
yes.
Um, well, even the word, yeah, like you said a minute ago, the isolation, that the idea of self by myself, care is it somehow or other I'm going to do it by myself. Although, and this is where I want to disagree with me, there are moments that I need solitude, that I need to be alone. And sometimes for an afternoon, and sometimes for a weekend, and sometimes for a week, that kind of let me sit in my stuff and let me do my work, as it were. That's important. But one can be in solitude and not be isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that there are a dozen people out there that I could, if I decided, oh, I'm a little lonesome, I wonder who wants to go for a walk, that I could just call and they'd say, sure, or how about tomorrow, or whatever, right? I also think it's important for those of us who are trying to make a shift in the world or offer something to the world, um, that we care for ourselves, but we do it in the context of I'm going to I'm going to go care for myself because it makes me a much more available person in the world, right? Because if I'm frazzled all the time and only doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and burned out, then I'm not much help to anybody. And so to be able to say, you know what, if maybe it's some time out would make some sense here. Let me slow down. Let me um, sit by the redwood trees. Let me uh, pull the weeds out of my garden. That's going to be good for me because that'll be good for my communities and the people that I care about. So it's always within a context of belonging to the earth, um, to life, right? So to take a breath and go, oh, every breath I take, that is the wind that has circulated on this planet forever.
Yes, that almost made me cry thinking about that idea of belonging and isolation versus loneliness because you're right. I mean, I definitely am someone that needs to recharge by being alone, whether it's watching
Mm-hmm.
TV in bed, doing some
Mm-hmm.
gardening, doing something like, please, everyone leave the house. I need to be alone right now. Like, I need that. And I think it's different when, I went back to school to become a horticultural therapist. And during that time, I really isolated myself because I just didn't feel like I had money to go out to eat, or I didn't, you know, was feeling kind of crappy because I was just so focused on school. And so I know that I isolated myself and it was different than needing alone time. So I think
Yes.
that's such an important distinction. And
Yes.
also that idea of being able to call someone for a walk versus not being able to make that call at all.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, if someone does need someone to walk with, I'm always here. It's like, it makes me so sad to think that someone couldn't call someone for a walk. Um,
But wait, that's important. Do your people know that you're available for that?
I think so. I definitely think so because, I mean, just today, and this is not a flex or a brag, I've had 3 people call me today that needed me for something.
Good.
So,
Good.
yes.
Which to me indicates that you are available to them, right? Because
Yes.
people won't call if they know we're not there,
Yes.
right? And so this ending isolation is risky. Oh
Mm,
my gosh, because it means we say to, our community or the world, um, I'm available, I'm here. And I also can set boundaries. So, no, I'm not always going to be on call. However, somebody wants to go for a walk, give me a call. If I can, I'll go. And that means then we have to do the calling too now
hmm
and say, hey, um, I'd love to grab some tea. Can you, do you want to go? Right? It's a reciprocal thing
hmm
and requires courage to reach out often, especially in a larger culture that says, don't ask for help, don't need anybody.
hmm
That's an indication of some weird strength that just never was the case.
Yes. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's really going to stay with me. And I'll have to say, I've been doing this new iteration of the podcast now for, I think this is, I don't know, 15, 20 episodes. And that is the first time I've cried. So thank you. um, so I want to, okay, one more thing before we move inside. One of the reasons why I wanted to interview you is this third act.
Mm-hmm.
And third act, actually, you know what? You explain it. I'm going to explain it and you could probably do a better job, but can you tell us what third act is?
Sure. It is a nonprofit organization because that's the structure that's most readily available for this kind of thing. People over 60 in this country, and we're here in the United States, so let me be clear about that. We own 70% of the wealth in this country. So as a generation, we are, and that's not to say everybody's wealthy because that ain't the case. However, as a generation, we control a lot of the wealth. We also have a lot of time. And so one of the things Bill and I, and Vanessa Parkara, who's the president, and Kafia Ahmed, who's the CEO, but when we were starting out about, 3.5, 4 years ago, the idea was here is this group of people, a body of people with lots of resources, lots of time, but that doesn't necessarily have easy access to social movements any longer. We said, well, what if we were to organize them so that they could engage and interrupt the isolation that so many of them were living in? And they could come together and we could provide the means for that. And it was just a great idea. Bill had a great idea. He said, let's like kind of put on a show. Let's make a club. Everybody can join. And so they came to me saying, hey, we'd like you to run it. And I was like, that is so not going to happen. So I said, hey, Vanessa seems brilliant. She's in her 40s. Let her run it. And they went, oh, okay, well, let her run it. And she has done an amazing, amazing job. And she put together a remarkable team. But basically, these are people over 60 in this country who are engaging in social justice work. For some, it is the first time they've done it. For many of them, we did it in our 20s and teens and 20s, and then went and had families and jobs and all the things and kind of dropped out of it. So it's a welcome back. This is all volunteer. They have a relatively small staff because their job is to support the people who are in their communities and their working groups, creating the conditions to shift the world. for many folks, this is a way to come into community and to get to know each other and to support the creation of a world that we want for ourselves and those who will come after us. And, I don't know what our numbers are, but 4 years ago we were going, well, how about an idea? Maybe we'll see and try it out. And I know we're well into the over 120,000 members.
Wow.
So
When I was reading about it more on the website, I thought what was really interesting is it's written that a lot of times we think of people as they age in their 60s and 70s as becoming more conservative, and that isn't always the case. And so I think what's so cool about Third Act is just giving people this outlet and opportunity.
right. Yeah. When you say conservative, I think it always requires a comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because my parents were, although they were civil rights activists, they were, by my standards, when I was in my 20s and in my 30s, they were relatively conservative, right? But not that they had necessarily changed. It's just that the world had changed, right? And similarly, the world has changed so that folks as I was coming of age, things were very binary. People were black or white. You were right or wrong. We were male or female. We were rich or poor, right? Things were very, very binary. And the world isn't like that anymore. And so, is it that people became more conservative, or the world moved and as our generation didn't move with the world in the same way?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most, fascinating things I've done at Third Act is host a series of cross-generation conversations, wherein I'll have, I'll have somebody in their 40s and another in their 30s, and somebody, we'll talk across generations about whatever the topic might be. And I've had to really change my mind, which is not always comfortable, right? And so I have some compassion for folks who are quote unquote conservative, because the world isn't how we thought it was. And it isn't going to shift back. It isn't. Folks in their 20s are not going to replicate the patterns that I had been taught to depend on. And so to go, oh, wait, so there are people who are gender nonconforming. What does that mean? For someone raised in a time of male or female, that can be very uncomfortable. And so part of our work, I think, part of my work has been to create the conditions by which we can sit in deep discomfort and still be in community together.
Gosh, I think that having those types of conversations, maybe prior to, I think maybe even after 2016, we still could. But I think that now those conversations are a little bit more difficult to have at times, because with the MAGA movement, it feels like a lot of these people will not budge. And quite honestly, I'm not really budging either on a lot of things. So I think when you're talking about having those conversations, I've found myself no longer wanting to communicate with some people or try to have those conversations to find a middle ground, because I just don't think that we're going to be able to get there.
I totally agree with you. Look, I'm not saying that, I'm not talking to the MAGA folks. I don't know any, don't necessarily want to seek that out. And I'm not bad or wrong for that. That's just not where my people are, right? Now, I live here in Oakland, California, so we don't have a huge contingent of folks who are, MAGA. Um, Now, if there's occasionally, I think, I wonder what a conversation with someone there who is willing to actually engage, not just write, that neither of us would write each other off. What
Hmm.
might that look like? Don't know. But I think look, when I think about what it would take for me to be so stuck in a point of view that I was unwilling to move in any direction, I would have to be very afraid. And I think about the amount of fear that MAGA folks must live with because the world is not moving in that direction. And do I understand fear? I do. Can I be compassionate about that? I can. Do I want to go play over there? Not at all.
Hmm. Yeah. I could talk about that for days, but there's one other thing I want. This is the last thing I'm going to ask you before we move inside is so much of what I was attracted to with third act is I'm seeing within my own friends that are mid 40s, 50s now, specifically women, whether it's AI or them just not being viewed as savvy or on trend anymore, not getting opportunities. And I think, there's definitely fields where I think that age is considered an asset, but a lot of fields, that's not always the case. And I think, it's when you look at your career, it looks, I'm thinking you haven't really had a lot of issues with that. I think that as a leader, people look oftentimes to people that have a lot of experience to lead. But I'm curious with all of your experience and any sort of thoughts or advice on people that are struggling with that right now with ageism. And you think about it, 45, 50, it's not even old. Like, I mean, it's astounding to me in some fields how there's already ageism. And I was just curious if you could talk on that.
Oh, goodness, you just opened a huge topic there. You know, the important thing, I think, is that each of us really understand what we're here for, right? Why did the universe create you now? And each of us is here for a purpose. That's my belief system. And that our job as humans is to understand what that is and then do that and only that. And I think one of the challenges in today's workforce, as it were, is that we're all supposed to be doing all things. We're supposed to be good at this and that and this and that and all the things. And then we get lost. And that's not anybody's fault. It is if there's a fault, it's a fault of the system. So, when I saw that you are a horticultural therapist, I went, what is that? So I had to look it up. And I thought, well, go ahead on, girl. You be a horticulture therapist. And I found myself going, I love that you carved that out.
And I will say it has been around, the profession has been around for over 100 years. It's just now it's
right.
given a name more.
Yes. Yes. But I'll tell you what, I'm 69 and I'd never heard of it. And I like to think I'm savvy, right? So, I was delighted that I had no idea what it was. The words make some sense to me, but that, you found it somehow or there and went, that's my work. That's important, right? I'm not stepping away from the ageism question because ageism is undoubtedly there. However, I look at, I support a lot of younger women, and anybody under 55 is a younger woman to me. And the finding our true selves is hard to do in a culture that tells us that that's the last thing we should be reaching. We should be making babies or getting married or all the things. And women are going, no, I'm not feeling that anymore, but I also don't know what else. And so to really understand, here's what I'm here to do. and then do that and only that. That's the task in front of us now.
And I appreciate that. And I see a lot of women in my life spiraling out because, whether they're designers or art directors or producers, and that's kind of what they felt like they were meant to do. And then to say, no, you've kind of aged out of that. It's really difficult to then think, okay,
Sure.
so wait, what is my thing? Like, how do I pivot? What do I do? And I think it's just, not only that, but you're maybe going through perimenopause and menopause. And it's a very intense time of life for many women. And
It is.
yeah. Yeah.
And the important thing, and I know I sound like a, constant ringing bell here, to do it in community, to find your people. Because it's, you're seeing it, I'm seeing it. And so there's no one should feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And that, I think, is part of the challenge here. There's nothing wrong with any of these women or people. I don't even need to be stuck in gender here. There's nothing wrong with anyone. It's that the systems that we're trying to maneuver through aren't working. And so to recognize, oh, okay, I am lovable. I can love. We can do this together. I'm having a hard day. Let's go for a walk, whatever. So that we're not trying to, again, navigate these toxic systems by ourselves.
Yes. Thank you for that. And I think, one thing, I was talking to a friend the other day that was really struggling with this. And when we really got to the bottom of it, it was just money.
Yes.
It wasn't about her
Yes.
self-worth because she knows that she's
Yes.
worthy. It was just about putting food on the table, supporting herself, paying rent.
Right.
It just comes down to money.
That's right. And you know what? So I thank you for this, because money is, or our monetary system is, one of our biggest problems.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough, quote, money in the world to feed every child and make sure every elder has health care. Everyone is educated. Everybody has a house. We have plenty of, quote unquote, money. It's just really despicably concentrated in a very few people. But we could feed every child on the planet tomorrow. And so, that there are people living on the streets is a travesty. And these systems are falling quickly. We can, you have to do a step outside for a moment and look at the social media. It's all falling down, as it must. And we're living in a very scary time. But as I've said a lot in the past, I'm not going to get through this time, but we will. If I felt like it was my job to fix all of this and somehow or other make it all better, I might as well, just go live in a cave tomorrow. I can't. But you and I can. You and all the people you're attached to and the people I'm attached to, we can do it for sure. And we will.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel like so many people need to hear this, and I just really appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so let's move inside. So every episode I have my guests bring an inside obsession, and these are the categories: TV, book, or movie you're obsessed with, internet gossip you must discuss, which I feel like this is not your pick, or a trend you love or hate, or wild card. What are you bringing to us today?
Well, it's a long time obsession, and it is feminist speculative fiction.
Oh, okay.
It's non-patriarchal, perhaps, is another way of saying it, because there have been, I'm thinking about Ernest Callenbach, who wrote Ecotopia, or Ursula Le Guin, who wrote Always Coming Home, or Becky Chambers is a relatively new writer, is writing just interesting. What if we imagined ourselves as humans being part of the land? What if we, because we need these stories, right? And, it was kind of weird when I was a 20-something-year-old Black girl reading science fiction, because, that's not what you did. Octavia Butler and Dawn comes to mind. Stories where we encounter quote unquote aliens, but we encounter them with curiosity and without the assumption of we're about to go into war, right? I love young, I used to love young adult fiction until we went into the Hunger Games era.
Yes.
Right? I remember the young adult fiction, or, high school fiction before that was very looking forward, going, what might be possible? And I get why the downturn into dystopia. I can barely read it now because I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is what young people are grappling with. And that makes me so sad, because one of the things I loved, even Heinlein, right, as a young woman, was to go, oh, we can be in relationship to our planet, other planets, in ways that are magical and bring out the best of us. We've done a pivot over the years, and I'm actually pleased to say that authors like Becky Chambers are offering us another set of ways to imagine how we might be human again, and it's delightful.
Wow. Well, I will include those authors in the show notes, and I will say that I have the guests share in advance what their inside thing is going to be. And Lucy told me that your inside thing was going to be the importance of rest and restoring ourselves in these chaotic times. And I love the shift to the books, but I would also love, just in your own words, maybe tell us ways that we can restore ourselves during these chaotic times. Just give us something, please, one thing that you might find impactful.
Get your feet in the dirt. Get your hands in the soil. Go into the forest and take your shoes off and sit by a tree. Go to the ocean and put your feet in the water. Look, we are mammals. Humans are mammals. We are not different from the flamingos or the turkeys or any of the trees. We're not different from them. We're distinctive, but we're made of the same stuff. And so when we can remember to, oh yeah, this soil actually is part of my chemistry. And, well, this is
I know, I just like someone else here saying it.
Right? And I don't do well when I don't have access to that. And, that's just humans, right? It would be like, I hate zoos, because zoos put animals who deserve to be free into pseudo spaces that they were never intended to be part of. And I'm going, no. Let the birds fly. Let the wolves dance, Let the fish swim. And let us, as humans, dance and swim and fly if we, whatever that means. We have to create the conditions by which we can restore ourselves and our communities and be in a very different relationship to this planet, which is all we really have.
Nothing else to say for that. That was absolutely perfect. If people want to support you, where can they go?
Oh, goodness. They can go down the street and notice who could use a hand. And go, oh, who could use a hand? And how are my neighbors doing? Have I checked in? Do they know how I'm doing? Let's have dinner. That's how people can help me.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're so welcome. Thanks for the wonderful conversation.
That's today's show. If you like this episode or any of the Inside and Outside episodes, please leave a review. You might not think it helps, but it really does. It helps you get into the little algorithm better and also lets advertisers know that you enjoy this show. All right, on Apple, here's how you do it. Go to the homepage, scroll all the way down to the end of the episodes, and you'll see something that says rating and reviews. Hit that 5 stars, write something. Just say love it if you want to. On Spotify, go to the homepage of the show. You'll see a little tiny gear icon. It'll have a drop down that says rate this show, leave 5 stars. There you can't even write anything. And that's it. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening to the show, and I'll talk to you next week.